Her nails pierced my wrist, sharp enough to draw tears I refused to let fall. Perfectly manicured talons digging into my flesh, a physical reminder of what my life had become. Pain disguised as love, control masked as protection. "Sign it," Michael hissed into my ear, his tone low and venomous. His other hand pressed down on the divorce papers, as if sheer force could make me surrender 15 years of my life with a single stroke of a pen. And on the other side of me, Vanessa, his mistress, the woman he had chosen over our years together, smiled with cruel satisfaction. The bank lobby around us went on with its quiet rhythm. Pens scratching, coins clinking, customers murmuring. No one realized that my entire life was being ripped apart right there at the desk. None of them saw the trembling in my fingers, or heard the pounding of my heart against my ribs. My pulse thundered as I gripped the pen, but instead of signing, my hand slipped a trembling scrap of paper toward the cashier. "Help! I'm under duress." The cashier's eyes flicked down, then up. His face paled. Within seconds, Mr. Thompson, the branch manager, appeared. I saw his hand press something beneath the counter. And in that moment, I knew the scheme Michael and Vanessa thought they had orchestrated in silence was about to collapse. This is my story. I used to stare at our wedding photo every morning. Michael and I, frozen in time, champagne flutes touching, smiles so wide they hurt. That photograph sat on our bedroom dresser in a silver frame his mother had given us. For the perfect couple, the engraving read. I polished that frame weekly, even as the marriage inside it dulled. That morning, the last morning I would wake up as Mrs. Hayes with any illusion intact, I noticed a crack in the glass. Tiny, almost invisible, starting from the edge and creeping toward Michael's face. How fitting, I thought. How terribly, perfectly fitting. "You're going to be late," Michael called from the kitchen of our Brooklyn apartment, the space we'd bought together when he made partner at his law firm and I'd received my promotion to marketing director. The home we'd decorated with arguments disguised as compromises, his minimalist taste winning over my desire for color and warmth. "Coming," I answered, my voice cheerful, practiced. I'd become good at that, maintaining the facade. Samantha Hayes, successfuls, marketing executive, devoted wife, master of appearing fine. I found him at the kitchen island, scrolling through his phone, coffee mug in hand. He didn't look up. He rarely did anymore. "I have a late meeting tonight," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "Don't wait up." Another late meeting. The third this week. I nodded, swallowing the question that burned in my throat. Who is she? Because I already knew. I just couldn't admit it to myself yet. "I made dinner reservations for our anniversary next week," I said instead, searching his face for any flicker of recognition. His fingers paused over his phone screen. "Next week? Thursday. 15 years. I kept my voice light, ignoring the way my stomach twisted. "Right." He nodded, resuming his scrolling. "Email me the details. I'll try. To make it work. Try." He would try to make our 15th anniversary work, like it was a minor obligation, a dental cleaning or an oil change. He left with a distracted kiss to my cheek, his cologne lingering in the air long after the door closed. I stood there, counting breaths, waiting for the tightness in my chest to ease. When it didn't, I picked up my phone and called the office. "I'll be working from home this morning," I told my assistant. Family matter. Family. Was that what Michael and I still were? I hadn't planned to follow him. I'd never been that wife, the suspicious one, the one who checked phone records and pockets. I'd prided myself on trust, on being above petty jealousy. But trust requires evidence, and lately, all evidence pointed in one direction. The law firm where Michael worked was 20 minutes from our apartment by subway. I arrived just before lunch, wearing sunglasses and a hat I never wore, feeling ridiculous and heartbroken all at once. I told the receptionist I was surprising my husband with lunch. "Oh, Mr. Hayes just left for lunch," she said cheerfully. "With Vanessa from legal. I think they went to Costello's around the corner," she delivered, this information with a smile, unaware she was confirming my worst fears. I thanked her and walked out, legs moving automatically toward Costello's, the Italian restaurant where Michael had proposed to me 16 years ago. They sat at a corner table, heads bent close together, her hand on his arm, his fingers brushing her hair back, intimate gestures that used to be mine. I stood frozen by the host stand, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. Vanessa Clark, the new paralegal Michael had mentioned hiring 6 months ago. Young, ambitious, beautiful, in that effortless way I'd stopped being years ago when work stress and marriage compromises had dulled my edges. I'd even met her at the firm's holiday party, noted how she'd laughed too long at Michael's jokes, touched his arm too. Often. I dismissed it then. Michael wouldn't, I thought. Not to me. Not after 15 years. Yet here they were, and when he leaned forward to kiss her, right there in public, not even hiding, something inside me cracked. Not my heart. Something deeper, more fundamental. My belief in us. My faith in the story we'd been writing together. I didn't confront them. I simply turned and walked out, surprising myself with my calm. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at our kitchen island. When my phone buzzed with a text from Michael, "Working late, don't wait up," I finally allowed myself to cry. Not because he was cheating, but because I'd known for months and had chosen to look away. The next morning, I called a locksmith and changed the locks. Then I called my friend Rachel, who'd been telling me for years that Michael didn't deserve me. "Come stay with me," she offered immediately. "No," I said, surprising myself with my certainty. "This is my home too. I paid half the down payment. My name is on the deed. I'm not leaving." When Michael came home that night and his key didn't work, he called me, outrage evident even through the phone. "What the hell, Sam? Open the door." I did. He stormed in, face flushed with anger, ready for battle. But I wasn't fighting. "I know about Vanessa," I said simply. "I saw you at Costello's." He didn't deny it. Didn't even look ashamed. Instead, his expression shifted to something worse. Relief. "This isn't working anyway," he said, gesturing between us. "Hasn't been for a while." 15 years dismissed with a wave of his hand. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" It did, but I didn't press. "What now?" "I want a divorce," he said. And the rehearsed quality of his words told me he'd been practicing this speech. "I think we can handle this like adults. No drama. No drama." As if discovering your spouse's betrayal should be processed with the emotional investment of a grocery list. "Fine," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'll talk to lawyers." He nodded, seemingly relieved by my compliance. "I'll get my things this weekend." "Where will you go?" I couldn't help asking. "To her?" A flash of discomfort crossed his face. "That's not your concern anymore." But it was. Everything about this situation was my concern. 15 years of my life were being erased, and I was supposed to step aside gracefully, without question or protest. As he packed a bag for the night, moving around our bedroom with practiced efficiency, I watched him and wondered, when had we become these people? When had I become so invisible to him that he could discard me without a second thought? When he left, I didn't cry again. Instead, I sat down at my computer and began to research divorce attorneys. If this was happening, I wouldn't be caught unprepared. I wouldn't be the woman who was too shocked to protect herself. What I didn't know then was how far Michael would go to ensure he got exactly what he wanted, and how much I would need to fight to hold on to not just my assets, but my very dignity. "He wants what?" Rachel's voice rose in disbelief over the rim of her wine glass. We sat in my living room, not our living room anymore, just mine, surrounded by Chinese takeout containers. "The apartment," I repeated, still numb from the meeting with Michael's attorney earlier that day. "And half of my retirement fund." "That's insane. You paid for half the apartment." Apparently, his contributions to the mortgage were greater over the years since he makes more. I stabbed at a piece of broccoli. "And since he supported my career growth, he feels entitled to the fruits of that growth." Rachel set down her glass with deliberate care. "Sam, you need a better lawyer." I nodded, but the truth was more complicated. The lawyer I'd hired, a woman with an impressive record of protecting wives in high-asset divorces, had looked increasingly uncomfortable as our meeting progressed. "Is there something you're not telling me, Mrs. Hayes?" she'd asked when we were alone. I'd shaken my head, confused. "Your husband seems very confident about his position," she continued, choosing her words carefully, almost as if he knows something we don't. That night, after Rachel left, I tore through our home office, searching for anything that might explain Michael's confidence. Hidden debt? Gambling problems? Some legal technicality I'd unwittingly signed years ago? I found nothing concrete, but the search itself revealed something just as troubling. Gaps in our financial records, statements missing from files, accounts I couldn't access online anymore. It was as if Michael had been systematically cutting me out of our financial life for Months. The next morning, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. About Michael. Meet me at Riverside Park near the 79th St. entrance. 1 p.m. V. Vanessa. My stomach lurched. What could she possibly have to say to me? I typed and deleted a dozen responses before finally sending, "Why?" The reply came immediately. Because he's lying to both of us. I went. Not because I trusted her, but because I needed answers more than I needed pride. Vanessa Clark was waiting on a bench, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd been kissing my husband at Costello's. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, her eyes hidden behind large sunglasses despite the cloudy day. She didn't stand when I approached. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. I sat beside her, leaving ample space between us. "You said he's lying." She nodded, removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "He told me you were separated. For months. That you'd agreed to divorce quietly. We weren't. I know that now." She laughed bitterly. "Just like I now know I'm not the first. There was someone before me. Maybe others. The information shouldn't have hurt. What difference did it make if he'd betrayed me once or a dozen times? But it did. Each revelation was a new wound on top of the old. Why are you telling me this?" Vanessa looked out across the park. "Because he's using me. And he's planning to take everything from you." She explained how Michael had been moving money, adjusting records, building a case against me, financially and otherwise. How he'd convinced Vanessa to help with some of the legal documentation, promising her they'd be together once everything was settled. "Then yesterday I overheard him on the phone with someone else," she said, her voice cracking slightly, "making the same promises he made to me." I should have felt vindicated by her pain. Instead, I just felt tired. We were both casualties of the same man's selfishness. "He wants you to sign everything over voluntarily," she continued. "That's why he's being nice now, offering mediation instead of litigation. The moment you sign, he'll have everything and you'll have nothing. Why would I ever sign?" She turned to look at me directly. "Because he's prepared to make things very ugly if you don't. He has information, things that could hurt your career." "What things? I haven't done anything wrong." "It doesn't matter if it's true. It just needs to seem plausible enough to create doubt with your clients." She hesitated. "He's desperate, Samantha. He's in financial trouble. Gambling debts, bad investments. He needs the apartment and your money. He'll do whatever it takes." I sat there, processing her words, trying to reconcile them with the man I'd married. Had I ever really known him? "Why are you helping me?" I finally asked. Vanessa stood, shoulders squared despite the vulnerability in her eyes. "I'm not helping you. I'm helping myself. I want out, and I want him to know he can't manipulate me anymore." As she walked away, she called over her shoulder. "Be careful. He's planning something for tomorrow. The bank meeting. The appointment." Michael had insisted I attend to sort out account details civilly. I'd agreed, thinking it was a step toward an orderly separation. Now I wondered what he really had planned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced our apartment, the home we'd chosen together, that now felt like contested territory. Every corner held memories that seemed false in retrospect. Every photograph a lie. When my phone rang at midnight, I answered without checking the caller ID, half expecting Vanessa with more warnings. Instead, it was Michael. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Just checking that we're still on for Hudson Trust tomorrow, 10 a.m. "Yes," I said, fighting to keep my voice neutral. "I'll be there." "Good." He paused. "This is the right thing, Sam. A clean break. You'll see." After he hung up, I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and made a decision. If Michael wanted a fight, I wouldn't give him one. I would appear compliant, agreeable, exactly what he expected. But I wouldn't sign anything. Not without understanding exactly what I was signing. The next morning, I dressed carefully. A gray pencil skirt, white blouse, minimal jewelry. Professional, forgettable. Hair pulled back, makeup, subtle. The kind of woman who blends into a bank lobby, who doesn't make a scene. As I applied lipstick in the bathroom mirror, I stared at my reflection. "You are not crazy," I told the woman looking back at me. "You are not overreacting. Trust yourself." I arrived at Hudson Trust Bank 10 minutes early. Michael was already waiting in the lobby, scrolling through his phone. Beside him stood Vanessa. My steps faltered. She hadn't mentioned she would be there. Her presence transformed this from a divorce proceeding to a public humiliation. Michael looked up, his smile practiced. "Sam, thank you for being punctual." as if I were an employee arriving for a performance review. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Vanessa wouldn't meet my eyes. She wore a red dress that seemed calculated to stand out against my muted gray, her hair loose and gleaming. A visual reminder of everything I wasn't. "Mr. Thompson is ready for us," Michael said, guiding me toward a desk in the corner of the lobby. Not a private office, a desk in the open, where anyone might witness whatever was about to happen. The bank manager rose to greet us, his handshake firm but his eyes uncertain as he looked between the three of us. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. And Ms. Clark," Vanessa supplied. "I'm here as a legal witness." A lie. She was a paralegal, not a notary. But Mr. Thompson merely nodded and gestured for us to sit. What happened next felt like watching a play where everyone had a script except me. Michael smoothly explaining that we needed to update account authorizations, Vanessa producing documents. That looked official, but that I wasn't allowed to examine closely. Mr. Thompson asking questions that Michael answered before I could open my mouth. And underneath it all, Michael's hand on my knee, fingers digging in whenever I tried to speak. A reminder. Behave, or else. Then the papers appeared. Not account authorizations, divorce papers. And not just divorce papers, but documents transferring. The apartment solely to Michael's name, liquidating my retirement account with penalties, even reassigning my car to him. "Just sign where indicated," Michael said. His voice gentle, but his eyes hard. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be." His hand slid up to grip my wrist, tight enough to hurt, and then Vanessa was there. On my other side, her nails digging into my other wrist. "Sign it," she whispered. "Just sign it quietly, and this will all be over." The betrayal was complete. She'd never intended to help me. Her warning had been part of their plan, to make me paranoid, emotional, so I'd appear unstable if I protested. I looked down at the papers, at Michael's elegant pen extended toward me, at Mr. Thompson's confused expression as he watched this tableau unfold. My pulse thundered as I gripped the pen. But instead of signing, my hand slipped a trembling scrap of paper I'd prepared in my purse toward the cashier. "Help. I'm under duress." The world seemed to slow down as Mr. Thompson's eyes fell to my note. I watched his face transform, confusion giving way to recognition, then alarm. His gaze darted between Michael's grip on my wrist and the papers before me, connecting the dots in real time. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deliberately measured. "Mrs. Hayes, would you mind stepping into my office for a moment? I believe there's an issue with your account verification that requires privacy." Michael's fingers tightened around my wrist. "Whatever it is, you can discuss it here. We're in a bit of a rush." Mr. Thompson's smile remained professional, but his eyes hardened. "I'm afraid bank policy requires private verification for certain transactions. It will only take a moment." He turned to me directly. "Mrs. Hayes?" I stood, ignoring Michael's warning glare. "Of course. This is ridiculous," Michael hissed, rising as well. "I'm coming too." "Sir," Mr. Thompson's voice dropped an octave. "This is a private matter between the bank and the, account holder. Please remain seated." Something in his tone made Michael hesitate, a subtle shift in authority that even a controlling man like my husband recognized. I saw his lawyer's mind calculating risks, appearances, witnesses. "Fine," he conceded, sinking back into his chair. 5 minutes. Vanessa remained silent, her earlier confidence faltering as she glanced nervously around the lobby. Mr. Thompson guided me toward his glass-walled office at the back of the bank. As we walked, I noticed him make eye contact with a security guard, who nodded almost imperceptibly and shifted position to keep Michael and Vanessa in view. Once inside, he closed the door and motioned for me to sit. "Mrs. Hayes," he said quietly, "are you safe at this moment?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, nearly broke my composure. When was the last time someone had asked about my safety, my well-being? "I'm not in physical danger," I managed. "But yes, I am under duress. Those papers, they're not what my husband claimed. He's trying to coerce me into signing away everything." Mr. Thompson nodded, his hand steady as he pressed a button under his desk. "I've activated our silent protocol. The police have been notified, not as an emergency but as a precautionary measure. They'll send someone discreetly." "Police?" I whispered, panic rising. "I don't want to cause a scene." "You're not causing anything, Mrs. Hayes. Your husband is attempting to commit financial coercion in my bank. That's a serious matter." His voice softened. "You're not the first person I've seen in this situation." He slid a business card across the desk. "This is the contact information for a domestic abuse resource center. Financial coercion is a form of abuse, Mrs. Hayes. I stared at the card, unable to process the word abuse in connection with my marriage. Abuse happened to other women, women without careers or voices or options, not to marketing executives with master's degrees. What happens now? I asked. That depends on what you want to happen. Mr. Thompson leaned forward. We can void all transactions. We can ask them to leave. We can have them escorted out if necessary. The choice is yours. The choice is yours. When was the last time anyone had said that to me? Michael had been making my choices for so long that the concept felt foreign, almost frightening. I don't want to sign those papers, I said, finding my voice. And I want copies of whatever he brought so my lawyer can review them. Mr. Thompson nodded. Good, that's a start. He stood up. Let's go back out there. Stay close to me and remember, you don't have to sign anything, not one line. As we re-entered the lobby, I saw Michael pacing impatiently, phone to his ear. Vanessa sat rigidly in her chair, eyes fixed on her lap. The security guard had moved closer, casually positioning himself near their table. Michael ended his call when he saw us approaching. Finally, what was that about? Mrs. Hayes has decided not to proceed with these transactions today, Mr. Thompson stated, his voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby customers. In fact, she would like copies of all documents for review by her own legal counsel. Michael's face darkened. That's not necessary. We've already discussed everything. Nevertheless, that's her decision. Mr. Thompson gestured to a bank employee who had materialized beside him. Patricia will make copies of everything for Mrs. Hayes to take with her. I watched the careful control in Michael's expression slipping. He'd always been so deliberate about maintaining his professional facade, especially in public. Now, tiny cracks appeared, a muscle twitching in his jaw, a flush creeping up his neck. Samantha, he said, voice lowered to a menacing whisper, you're making a serious mistake. Do you really want to do this here? Now? For 15 years, that tone had made me back down. It promised consequences, disappointment, withdrawal of affection. It was the voice that had trained me to prioritize peace over truth, his comfort over my needs. Yes, I said, surprising myself with my steadiness. I really do. Patricia returned with a thick folder of copies, which she handed directly to me. I clutched it like a shield. Is there anything else you need from the bank today, Mrs. Hayes? Mr. Thompson asked. I shook my head. Then perhaps it's best if we conclude this meeting. Michael stepped closer, his body language intimidating despite the public setting. You're coming home with me. Now. We'll discuss this privately. No, I'm not. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Clear, firm. Mrs. Hayes will be leaving separately, Mr. Thompson interjected. And I must ask you both to exit the premises as well. He gestured toward the entrance where, I now noticed, 2 uniformed police officers had quietly appeared. The sight of those officers seemed to penetrate Michael's anger. His lawyer's instincts finally overrode his rage as he calculated the optics of the situation, a public scene, bank staff intervening, law enforcement present. Whatever he had planned, it was unraveling spectacularly. This isn't over, he muttered, reaching for his briefcase. You have no idea what you're doing. Vanessa stood quickly, avoiding everyone's eyes. The confidence she'd shown earlier, the cruel satisfaction when she'd dug her nails into my wrist, had evaporated completely. As they walked toward the exit, Michael maintaining a veneer of dignity, Vanessa following a step behind, I felt something unexpected. Pity. Not for myself, but for her. She thought she'd won him, but I knew better now. Michael Hayes belonged to no one except himself. Mr. Thompson touched my elbow gently. The officers would like to speak with you briefly, if you're comfortable with that. They won't take action unless you request it, but they can document what happened here today. I nodded, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me hollow. The next hour passed in a blur, giving a statement to a kind-faced officer named Rodriguez, receiving information about restraining orders I didn't think I needed, accepting Mr. Thompson's offer to call me a car service rather than take the subway home. You did something brave today, he told me as we waited for the car outside. The bank. Most people don't find that courage until it's too late. I looked at him, this stranger who had become an unexpected ally. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. That's what real courage is, Mrs. Hayes. Doing what's right despite the fear. He handed me another card, his personal contact information. If you need anything, or if he tries to access your accounts again, call me. Directly. The car arrived, and as I slid into the back seat, clutching my folder of evidence and collection of support cards, I realized something important. For the first time since discovering Michael's betrayal, I wasn't alone. I wasn't just Samantha Hayes, abandoned wife. I was a woman who had spoken up, who had been heard, who had allies. Whatever came next, I would face it standing tall. The car pulled away from Hudson Trust Bank, I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me anymore except the memory of the moment I finally found my voice. The first text came before I even reached my apartment. "You humiliated me. You'll regret this." I deleted it without responding. Then another. "Check your email. See what happens when you cross me." My hands trembled as I unlocked my door, double-checking that it was secure behind me. The apartment felt different somehow. The silence heavier, the spaces emptier. I'd lived here with Michael for years, but only now did it feel truly mine, a sanctuary rather than a shared space. I set down my purse and the folder of documents, kicked off my shoes, and took a deep breath, one step at a time. When I finally checked my email, I understood Michael's threat. He'd sent a draft letter to my company's board of directors, alleging financial improprieties on accounts I managed, claiming I'd diverted client funds for personal use. The allegations were completely fabricated, but detailed enough to raise questions, to require investigation. Even if proven false, the mere suggestion could damage the career I'd built. This was what Vanessa had warned me about, the information he was prepared to use against me. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a single line, evidence of blackmail and defamation. Then I blocked Michael's number and email address. Whatever else he had to say, he could say through legal channels. I spent the evening creating a detailed timeline of events, from the first signs of Michael's affair to the scene at the bank. When I finished, I stared at the document, seeing our marriage distilled into a clinical progression of betrayals and manipulations. How had I missed so many warning signs? A knock at my door startled me from my thoughts. Panic flared. Was it Michael? Had he come to continue the confrontation away from witnesses? I approached cautiously, checking the peephole. Rachel stood in the hallway, holding a bottle of wine and a takeout bag. "I've been calling you," she said when I opened the door. "Why aren't you answering your phone?" I hadn't even heard it ring. "Sorry, it's been a day." She took one look at my face and set down her offerings to pull me into a hug. What happened? I told her everything. Vanessa's warning, the bank meeting, Mr. Thompson's intervention, Michael's threats. The words poured out, no longer trapped inside me. "Jesus, Sam." Rachel's eyes widened as I showed her the copied documents, the scope of what Michael had attempted becoming clear. "He would have left you with nothing." "Not nothing," I corrected bitterly. "He would have left me with debt and a ruined reputation." She uncorked the wine with more force than necessary. "I always knew he was a self-centered ass, but this is criminal. That's what Mr. Thompson said, that it was financial coercion. It's more than that. It's abuse, Sam." There was that word again. Abuse. I still flinched at it, still couldn't fully connect it to my reality. "He never hit me. He didn't have to." Rachel handed me a glass of wine. "He controlled you. He isolated you from friends. He manipulated you. He threatened you. That's abuse." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling around us. Was that true? Had I been abused without recognizing it? The thought made me dizzy, forcing me to reconsider not just the end of my marriage, but its entire foundation. "What do I do now?" I whispered. "You fight," Rachel said simply. "Not just for your money or your apartment, for your dignity." The next morning, I called my lawyer and scheduled an emergency appointment. When I arrived at her office, I brought everything: the documents from the bank, printouts of Michael's threatening messages, my timeline. Jennifer Walsh Esquires reviewed it all with a carefully neutral expression that only occasionally betrayed her shock. "Mrs. Hayes," she said finally, setting down the papers. "This changes everything about your case." "How so?" "Your husband attempted to defraud you in a financial institution with witnesses. He sent explicit threats and blackmail. He brought an unauthorized third party to what he presented as a confidential financial meeting." She leaned forward. "He's given us everything we need." For the first time, I saw a path forward that didn't end with Michael taking everything. "What's our next step?" "First, we file for an emergency hearing to freeze all assets so he can't move anything else. Then we request temporary exclusive use of the marital home. You stay, he's legally required to stay away." She made quick notes. We'll need statements from the bank manager and copies of security footage if possible. I nodded, trying to keep pace with her. Rapid planning. Most importantly, she continued, we stop playing defense. Your husband thinks he's the only one who can be aggressive here. Let's show him otherwise. The next week passed in a blur of legal filings, evidence gathering, and emotional whiplash. Michael attempted to contact me several more times, alternating between threats and sudden declarations that he wanted to talk things through reasonably. I forwarded each message to Jennifer without response. The temporary restraining order was granted on Thursday, exactly when we should have been celebrating our 15th anniversary. Instead, I spent the evening changing the security codes on the apartment and installing a doorbell camera. On Friday morning, I returned to work for the first time since the bank incident. I'd spoken with my boss, explained enough of the situation to make clear I might need flexibility in the coming weeks. To my surprise, she was immediately supportive. Take whatever time you need, she said. Your projects are covered. Your job is secure. I'd expected judgment or at least awkward pity. Instead, I found solidarity. My female colleagues closing ranks around me, male coworkers offering sincere support. The isolation I'd felt in my marriage hadn't followed me here. As I settled at my desk, attempting to lose myself in the familiar comfort of marketing strategies and client presentations, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Vanessa. Can we meet? Please. It's important. I stared at the message, memories of her nails digging into my wrist still fresh. The last time she'd asked to meet, she'd manipulated me, setting me up for Michael's scheme. Why would I trust her now? But something in the brevity of the message gave me pause. No explanations, no excuses, just a request. I showed the text to Rachel over lunch. Absolutely not, she said immediately. It's another trap. Maybe, I agreed. But what if it's not? What if she has information I need? Then let her give it to your lawyer. Rachel shook her head. You don't owe her a meeting. She was right. I didn't owe Vanessa anything. Yet curiosity nagged at me. What could possibly be important enough for her to reach out now? Had Michael moved on to a new target already, leaving both of us behind? Against my better judgment, I texted back, "Why should I trust you?" The response came immediately. You shouldn't. But I have proof of what he's done. Not just to you, to the firm, to clients. I made copies before he fired me. Fired her? That was new information. The last I'd heard, they were still conspirators. Meet me in public. Bring someone you trust if you want. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Bryant Park. Main reading room entrance. I forwarded the exchange to Jennifer, who advised extreme caution but acknowledged the potential value of whatever evidence Vanessa might have. If you go, she warned, take someone with you. Record everything. And meet only in the most public place possible. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the apartment, mind racing with possibilities. Was Vanessa telling the truth? Had she turned against Michael too? Or was this another elaborate trap? In the darkness of what had once been our bedroom, I caught sight of the wedding photograph again, still sitting on the dresser with its cracked glass. I picked it up, studying the faces of two people who no longer existed, the hopeful bride, the seemingly devoted groom. With sudden resolution, I removed the photograph from its broken frame and tore it neatly in half, separating Michael from me permanently. Then I placed my half in a drawer and threw his in the trash. Whatever happened tomorrow, whatever Vanessa had to say, I was no longer the woman in that photograph. I was someone new. Someone who had found her voice at a bank counter and wasn't about to lose it again. Bryant Park hummed with Saturday afternoon energy. Children laughing by the carousel, tourists snapping photos, locals sprawled on the lawn, with books and picnics. I arrived 20 minutes early, positioning myself on a bench with clear sightlines to all entrances. Rachel sat beside me, sunglasses hiding vigilant eyes. I still think this is a mistake, she murmured. Probably, I agreed, scanning the crowd. But I need to know what she has. At exactly 2 p.m., Vanessa appeared at the reading room entrance. She looked different. Her usual polished appearance replaced by jeans, a plain sweater, and minimal makeup. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest like a shield. Her eyes found mine across the lawn, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then she walked toward me, her stride lacking its usual confidence. "Thank you for coming," she said, stopping a respectful distance away. Her gaze flickered to Rachel. "Is this your lawyer?" "My friend," I replied. "She stays." Vanessa nodded, sitting on the bench opposite us. "I wouldn't expect you to be alone with me, not after..." She trailed off, eyes dropping to my wrist where faint bruises still marked where her nails had dug in. Why are you here? I kept my voice neutral, refusing to make this easy for her. She placed the envelope on the bench between us. 3 days ago, Michael called me into his office. I thought... She laughed bitterly. Well, it doesn't matter what I thought. He fired me, said I was a liability after the scene at the bank. I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? The words came out sharper than I intended. No, she said quietly. You have no reason to feel anything for me except contempt. She pushed the envelope toward me. But you should see these. I didn't touch it. What is it? Evidence. Financial records, client communications, transfers Michael made over the last year. Her voice dropped. Including money he took from the firm's client trust accounts. That got my attention. Misappropriating client funds was serious. Career ending for an attorney, potentially criminal. Why would you give me this? Vanessa met my eyes. Directly for the first time. Because I was stupid, but I'm not evil. I believed him when he said you were the problem. That you were unstable, controlling, that you'd agreed to the divorce but were being difficult about terms. Rachel scoffed beside me. Vanessa acknowledged the reaction with a nod. I know how it sounds. I should have questioned it. But he was convincing. She twisted her hands in her lap. When I saw your face at the bank, when you passed that note, I knew. Everything he'd told me was a lie. I studied her, searching for deception. All I saw was exhaustion and regret. He used me, she continued, professionally, personally. And when I was no longer useful, he discarded me, just like he did to you. A strange sense of kinship flickered between us. 2 women, manipulated by the same man, drawn into his orbit and then cast aside. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it contextualized it. Why didn't you go to the police? Rachel asked. If he's stealing client money, that's criminal. Vanessa's shoulders slumped. Because I helped him. Not knowingly, but I processed some of the transfers. My fingerprints are all over this. At best, I'd lose my career. At worst, I could face charges too. I finally reached for the envelope, opening it carefully. Inside were dozens of documents. Bank statements, transfer authorizations, emails. I couldn't process the details immediately, but even a cursory glance revealed patterns of funds moving where they shouldn't. I made copies, Vanessa said. The originals are in a secure location. If anything happens to me, happens to you? I interrupted. What do you mean? She glanced around nervously. Michael knows I had access to these records. He's been calling, threatening. Yesterday, someone followed me home from the grocery store. The fear in her voice seemed genuine. Whatever game she might have been playing before, this part felt real. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. Use them. Don't use them. That's your choice. She stood, adjusting her purse strap with trembling fingers. I just thought you should have all the weapons possible for what's coming. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Vanessa, why did you do it? At the bank. Why did you hurt me like that? She paused, her back to me. Because I thought I was fighting for my future. I thought he loved me. Her voice broke slightly. I was wrong about everything. We watched her walk away, disappearing into the Saturday crowd. The envelope sat heavy in my lap, filled with secrets and sins. Do you believe her? Rachel asked. I don't know, I admitted. But these look real. That evening, Jennifer reviewed the documents in my living room, her expression growing increasingly grave. This is significant. Samantha, not just for your divorce, but potentially for criminal proceedings. Against Michael? Yes, and possibly the firm if they've been negligent in their oversight. She organized the papers into neat stacks. I'll need to bring in a forensic accountant to verify everything. Do you think Vanessa could be setting me up somehow? I asked. Using me to take Michael down while protecting herself? Jennifer considered this. It's possible, but these documents appear authentic, and they align with the patterns we've already identified in your financial records. What should I do now? First, we secure these somewhere safe. She gestured to the documents. Then, we wait. We let the accountant do their work before making any moves. Later, alone in my apartment, I found myself standing at the window, looking out at the Brooklyn night. The city lights blurred through unshed tears as the full weight of the situation settled on me. My marriage hadn't just ended. It had been revealed as something entirely different from what I'd believed it to be. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Did you look at what I gave you? B. I hesitated, then replied, yes. My lawyer has it now. Good. Be careful. He's desperate. I was about to put my phone down when another message appeared. I'm sorry, Samantha, for everything. What do you say to the woman who helped your husband try to destroy you, who then potentially saved you with evidence of his crimes? I settled on the truth. I don't forgive you, but I understand how he operates now. Take care of yourself. The next morning, Sunday, I woke to pounding on my door. Heart racing, I checked the doorbell camera I'd installed. Michael stood in the hallway, disheveled and furious. Open the door, Sam. I know you're in there. His voice, once so controlled, now edged with panic. I called the police, then texted Jennifer. Michael at my door, violating restraining order. Police called. As I waited, his pounding grew, more insistent. You think you've won? You have no idea what you're dealing with. Open the goddamn door. Neighbors peeked into the hallway, then retreated at the sight of his rage. I stood frozen in my living room, watching his distorted image on my phone screen as he continued his tirade. When two police officers appeared behind him, the relief nearly buckled my knees. They spoke to him firmly, showing him documents, the restraining order, presumably. Michael gesticulated wildly, his lawyer persona completely abandoned. As they escorted him away, I sank onto my couch, trembling. This man had shared my bed for 15 years. I'd loved him, trusted him, built a life with him. Now he was being removed from my door by police, screaming threats. An hour later, an officer returned to take my statement. We've detained your husband for violating the order of protection, she explained gently. He'll likely be released on bail, but this violation strengthens your case. Is he dangerous? The question felt surreal leaving my lips. The officer's expression softened. People are most unpredictable during separation, Mrs. Hayes. I'd recommend staying with someone else for a few days, if possible. After she left, I called Rachel, who arrived within 30 minutes with an overnight bag. You're staying with me, no arguments. As I packed essentials, my phone rang. Jennifer. I just heard about Michael. Are you all right? Yes, shaken, but fine. There's something else, she said. I received a call from the district attorney's office. Someone sent them copies of the same documents Vanessa gave you. My heart skipped. Vanessa? They wouldn't say, but they're opening an investigation into Michael and the firm. They want to speak with you tomorrow. Another piece of the puzzle shifted into place. Vanessa hadn't just given me the documents. She'd sent them to authorities as well. Perhaps her redemption tour was more comprehensive than I'd realized. As Rachel drove us to her apartment, I stared out the window at the familiar Brooklyn streets that suddenly felt foreign. Everything was changing, accelerating beyond my control. You know what's strange? I said softly. A week ago, I was terrified of losing everything. Now I'm just glad to be free of him. Rachel squeezed my hand. That's not strange, Sam. That's healing. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to believe that might be true. Something was ending, yes, but something else was beginning too. I just couldn't see its shape yet. The district attorney's office occupied a stern government building in downtown Brooklyn. I sat in a conference room with Jennifer beside me, facing Assistant District Attorney Elena Morales and a financial crimes investigator named Clark. Thank you for coming in, Mrs. Hayes, Morales began. I understand these circumstances are difficult. I nodded, hands clasped tightly in my lap. We've been reviewing the documents provided to us regarding your husband's financial activities, she continued. Based on our preliminary investigation, there appear to be serious irregularities with client trust accounts at his firm. Clark opened a folder. We've identified approximately $1.8 million in questionable transfers over the past 18 months. The number shocked me into silence. I'd expected malfeasance, but not on this scale. Mrs. Hayes. Morales leaned forward. Did you have any knowledge of these activities? No, I said firmly. I had no access to Michael's work accounts. I didn't even know there were problems until recently. Can you tell us how you obtained these documents? Jennifer interjected. My client received them from Vanessa Clark, a former paralegal at the firm who worked closely with Mr. Hayes. Morales and Clark exchanged glances. Ms. Clark has also contacted our office, Morales acknowledged. She's offered to cooperate in exchange for immunity. So, Vanessa was protecting herself after all. I couldn't blame her. She'd been caught in Michael's web just as I had been, albeit differently. What happens now? I asked. We continue our investigation, Clark said. Mr. Hayes will be interviewed. The firm will be audited. This may take months to fully unravel. Morales' expression softened slightly. Mrs. Hayes, we understand your divorce proceedings are ongoing. This criminal investigation may complicate matters. How so? Assets that might normally be divided in a divorce could be subject to seizure if they're determined to be proceeds of criminal activity. The timeline for resolution could be extended significantly. Jennifer nodded beside me. We anticipated this possibility. My client's primary concern is protecting her own financial future from both her husband's claims and any potential fallout from his actions. That's prudent, Morales agreed. We'll need your continued cooperation as we move forward. As we left the building, I felt oddly light despite the gravity of the situation. The stakes had shifted. This was no longer just about my marriage ending, but about a much larger web of deception. What does all this mean for the divorce? I asked Jennifer as we walked to her car. It changes the landscape entirely, she replied. Michael is now fighting on two fronts, against you and against potential criminal charges. His leverage is diminishing by the day. And the apartment? My retirement accounts? We'll file motions to protect them as innocent spouse assets. Given what we know now, the court is likely to be sympathetic. The next week passed in a strange, suspended animation. I returned to work, finding unexpected comfort in the routine of client meetings and marketing strategies. My colleagues gave me space while making it clear they had my back. My boss even pulled me aside to assure me my position was secure, regardless of what happened with Michael. Your work speaks for itself, she said simply. Your personal situation doesn't change that. Rachel insisted I continue staying with her, though I snuck back to my apartment occasionally to collect more clothes or check the mail. Each time, I half expected to find Michael lurking in the hallway, but he never appeared. According to Jennifer, he'd been released on bail with stricter conditions. Any further violations would land him in jail until trial. On Friday afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Thompson at Hudson Trust Bank. Mrs. Hayes, he greeted me warmly. I hope you're doing well under the circumstances. Better than expected, I admitted. Thank you again for your help that day. That's partly why I'm calling. The police have requested our security footage from that morning, and I wanted you to be aware. I tensed. Is that standard procedure? For a criminal investigation? Yes. Detective Rodriguez mentioned it's related to financial crimes charges being prepared against your husband. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at nothing. The machinery of justice was moving forward, grinding slowly but inexorably. Michael's carefully constructed world was collapsing around him, and I was both witness and catalyst. That evening, I received another unexpected call from Michael's mother, Eleanor Hayes. We'd never been close. She'd always treated me with polite distance, clearly believing her son had married beneath his potential. We hadn't spoken since before I discovered the affair. Samantha, her crisp voice came through the line. I think we should meet. I almost laughed at the audacity. I don't think that's a good idea. I understand your reluctance, she continued as if I hadn't objected. But there are things you should know. Things about Michael that might explain certain behaviors. Curiosity warred with caution. What things? Not over the phone. She named an upscale restaurant near her Upper East Side apartment. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Against Jennifer's advice and Rachel's outraged objections, I went. Something in Eleanor's tone had gotten past my defenses. Not manipulation, but resignation, perhaps even regret. She was already seated when I arrived, elegant as always in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. At 72, Eleanor Hayes remained formidable, her silver hair perfectly styled, her posture impeccable. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat across from her. I'm not, sure why I did, I admitted. She signaled for the waiter, ordering tea for herself, and after a questioning glance at me, a second cup. The small courtesy surprised me. She'd never bothered to learn my beverage preferences before. I won't insult you by apologizing for Michael, she began once we were alone. His actions are his own, and they're indefensible. I blinked, caught off guard by her directness. I'm not here to defend him or to convince you to drop the divorce, she continued. I'm here because I failed both of you in different ways, and perhaps understanding might offer you some peace. Understanding what? Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she straightened her silverware. Michael's father, my late husband, was not the man people thought he was. His public persona, successful attorney, community leader, devoted family man, masked something darker. He was controlling, manipulative. He managed our family's image with the same ruthless efficiency he managed his cases. I listened, pieces clicking into place. Michael had rarely spoken of his father, who died when he was in law school. He taught Michael that appearance was everything, that emotions were weaknesses to be concealed, that people were either assets or obstacles. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes revealed old pain. I saw it happening, but did nothing to counter it. I was too afraid, too comfortable in our life. Why are you telling me this now? Because I recognized the pattern too late. Michael became his father, outwardly charming, privately cold. I should have warned you years ago. She met my gaze directly. It doesn't excuse what he's done to you or to others, but perhaps it explains it. Did you know? About the financial issues? She shook her head. Not specifically, but I knew he was in trouble somehow. He's been different lately. Desperate. When he told me you were divorcing, he cast himself as the victim, of course. But I knew better. The waiter delivered our tea. I watched her precise movements as she added a single sugar, stirred exactly twice. What do you want from me, Eleanor? Nothing, she said simply. I just thought you deserved to know you're not crazy. That the man you married showed you only what he wanted you to see. And that none of this is your fault. As we parted outside the restaurant, she surprised me again by taking my hand. I always thought you were too good for him, she said quietly. I should have told you that too. I watched her walk away. This proud woman who had carried her own secrets and regrets for decades. For the first time, I saw her not as Michael's intimidating mother, but as another woman who had made compromises she later came to regret. On the subway ride back to Rachel's apartment, I turned our conversation over in my mind. Eleanor had given me something valuable, context, not for forgiveness, but for understanding. The patterns that had trapped me hadn't originated with Michael, but had been passed down, father to son, a toxic inheritance. It didn't excuse anything, but it helped me see my marriage with clearer eyes. Not as a love story gone wrong, but as a performance that had finally exhausted its lead actor. When I arrived at Rachel's, I found her in animated conversation with Vanessa, of all people, at the kitchen table. What's going on? I asked, frozen in the doorway. Rachel looked apologetic. She brought more documents, things she thought might help with your case. Vanessa stood awkwardly. I can go. No, I said, surprising myself. Stay, let's talk. As I hung up my coat, I realized something had shifted within me. The anger I'd been carrying, not just toward Michael, but toward everyone connected to him, had begun to lighten. Not because I'd forgiven, but because I'd started to understand. An understanding I was learning was its own form of freedom. 6 weeks after the bank incident, I stood outside the courthouse, watching autumn leaves scatter across the steps. The day had finally arrived. Our first major hearing in both the divorce and the expanding financial investigation. Ready? Jennifer asked, portfolio tucked under her arm. I nodded, smoothing down my navy suit. I'd chosen it carefully, professional but not flashy, confident without being aggressive. Today wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with unusual activity. What should have been a routine divorce hearing had attracted attention due to the parallel criminal investigation. Junior associates from Michael's firm occupied one row, their expressions a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity. Behind them sat Vanessa, who gave me a small nod of acknowledgement. Most surprising was Eleanor Hayes in the back corner, straight-backed and inscrutable. Our eyes met briefly before she inclined her head slightly, a gesture of respect I never thought I'd receive from her. Michael entered with his attorney, Gregory Winters, a sharply dressed man with a reputation for aggressive tactics. Michael himself looked diminished somehow, his usual commanding presence undermined by dark circles under his eyes and a suit that hung slightly loose on his frame. He didn't look at me. Judge Martinez called the court to order, addressing the unusual circumstances immediately. I understand there's a related criminal investigation ongoing. Ms. Walsh, how does this affect today's proceedings? Jennifer rose smoothly. Your Honor, we believe these matters are inseparable. Mr. Hayes's financial improprieties directly impact the marital assets under consideration. Winters objected predictably. The criminal allegations remain unproven, Your Honor. They shouldn't taint these proceedings. Judge Martinez silenced him with a look. I'm well aware of the distinction, Counselor. However, I cannot ignore evidence that may be relevant to equitable distribution. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Michael's case. Jennifer presented our evidence chronologically. The hidden accounts, the transferred assets, the attempted coercion at the bank. Mr. Thompson testified about my note, about Michael's behavior, about the restraining order violation. Throughout it all, I sat silent, watching Michael's face as his carefully constructed narrative collapsed. With each new revelation, his expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and, finally, a resignation that seemed almost like relief. When Vanessa was called to testify, a ripple of tension passed through the courtroom. She walked to the stand with quiet dignity, swore her oath, and then systematically outlined her role in Michael's schemes, first as an unwitting accomplice, then as a deliberate participant, and finally as a whistleblower. "Why did you decide to come forward?" Jennifer asked her. Vanessa's eyes found mine briefly before returning to Jennifer. "Because I saw what he was capable of that day at the bank, the way he treated his wife, someone he'd promised to love and protect. I realized I wasn't special. I was just next in line." During the brief recess that followed, I stood alone in the hallway, processing everything. The Michael I thought I knew had never existed. The man I'd married was a performance, a carefully crafted illusion. "Samantha," I turned to find Michael standing several feet away, his attorney conspicuously absent. "You shouldn't be talking to me," I said, glancing toward the bailiff at the end of the hallway. "I know." He looked diminished. His shoulders slumped. "I just wanted to say, this isn't what I wanted." "What did you want, Michael?" The question emerged calm, curious rather than accusatory. He seemed surprised by my tone. "I don't know anymore. To win, I guess. To never lose control. And how's that working out?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Not great." He hesitated. "I'm probably going to jail, aren't I?" I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. "My mother came to see me," he said suddenly. "Told me I'd become my father. That she'd failed us both." His voice cracked slightly. "Was I always this person, Sam? Or did I become him?" The vulnerability seemed genuine, but I'd learned my lesson about Michael's performances. "I don't know. And honestly, it doesn't matter anymore." His lawyer appeared at the end of the hall looking alarmed to find us talking. Michael nodded, understanding our conversation was over. As he turned to leave, he paused. "For what it's worth, and I know it's not worth much, I'm sorry." I watched him walk away, realizing with a strange sense of peace that I felt nothing. No anger, no love, no regret. Just emptiness where powerful emotions had once lived. When court reconvened, Judge Martinez delivered her ruling with firm clarity. The restraining order would remain in place. I would retain exclusive use of our apartment. All financial assets would be frozen pending both the divorce settlement and criminal proceedings. Furthermore, she added, fixing Michael with a stern gaze, given the evidence of attempted financial coercion and Mr. Hayes' violation of the previous restraining order, this court has serious concerns about his respect for legal proceedings. Mr. Hayes will surrender his passport to the court immediately. I exhaled slowly, relief washing through me. This wasn't the end, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that I had been wronged and deserved protection. As we gathered our materials to leave, Assistant District Attorney Morales approached our table. "Mrs. Hayes, a moment." She led us to a private conference room, where Clark waited with a stack of folders. "We're filing formal charges against your husband tomorrow," she informed us. "Securities fraud, wire fraud, misappropriation of client funds, and attempted financial coercion." "How strong is your case?" Jennifer asked. "Very. Ms. Clark's testimony and documentation provide a clear timeline of wrongdoing." Morales turned to me. "We'd like you to testify as well, specifically about the bank incident." I nodded, though the thought of reliving that day in front of a jury made my stomach twist. "There's something else," Clark added. "Our investigation revealed your husband wasn't acting alone. Several partners at the firm were aware of, if not directly involved in, the misappropriation of funds. The implications were staggering. Not just Michael, but potentially the entire firm under investigation. The scandal would rock the legal community." "What does this mean for Samantha's financial situation?" Jennifer pressed. "It's complicated," Morales admitted. "Some assets may be subject to forfeiture if they're proven to be proceeds of criminal activity. However," she added, seeing my expression, "as an innocent spouse who was demonstrably victimized, you have certain protections. We'll work with you to minimize any collateral damage." That evening, I returned to my apartment for the first time in weeks. Rachel had helped clean it, removing Michael's remaining possessions and rearranging furniture to create a space that felt entirely mine. As I settled on the couch with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. You were incredible today. Strong, dignified, I'm still learning from you. I smiled despite myself, typing back, we both survived him. That's what matters. Later, standing at my bedroom window overlooking Brooklyn's twinkling lights, I realized something profound. I was no longer afraid. Not of Michael, not of financial ruin, not of starting over. The woman who had slipped that desperate note to a bank teller 6 weeks ago seemed like a different person now. Someone I remembered with compassion, but no longer recognized as myself. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, unburdened by the weight of a false marriage. Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, washing the city clean. I pressed my palm against the cool glass, watching droplets trace paths downward, carrying away the dust of the day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The criminal case, the divorce proceedings, rebuilding my life piece by piece. But tonight, in this moment of quiet triumph, I allowed myself to simply breathe, fully and freely, perhaps for the first time in 15 years. 1 year later, I stood in almost the exact same spot by my bedroom window, watching spring rain baptize Brooklyn in gentle renewal. So much had changed, yet this view remained constant, a touchstone in a transformed life. Michael had pled guilty 6 months ago, accepting a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against 2 senior partners at the firm. The plea deal spared me from testifying, a mercy I hadn't expected but gratefully accepted. 10 years in federal prison, financial restitution, disbarment. Consequences that seemed both severe and somehow insufficient for the damage he'd caused. I hadn't attended the sentencing. Eleanor had, though. She'd called me afterward, her voice steady, but tired. "It's done," she'd said simply. "He asked me to tell you he didn't contest any of your claims in the divorce. He said it was the least he could do. The least indeed. The divorce had finalized 3 months ago, clean and uncontested. I kept the apartment, my retirement accounts, and received a settlement that acknowledged the years I'd supported Michael's career at the expense of my own advancement. Not that it mattered much now. The promotion I'd received at work had nearly doubled my salary, a recognition of the steadiness I'd maintained despite personal chaos. The firm had collapsed spectacularly under the weight of the scandal, with innocent attorneys scrambling to other positions across the city. Vanessa had been granted immunity for her cooperation and had moved to Boston to start fresh. We still exchanged occasional texts. Not quite friendship, but a connection forged in unusual circumstances that neither of us wanted to completely sever. A knock at my door pulled me from my thoughts. Rachel stood in the hallway, dressed for our weekly dinner, an umbrella dripping at her feet. "Ready to celebrate?" she asked, embracing me. "Is a divorce anniversary really something to celebrate?" I laughed, grabbing my coat. "Absolutely. It's your Independence Day." She linked her arm through mine as we headed for the elevator. 1 year since you officially untangled yourself from the human disaster that was Michael Hayes. The restaurant was busy for a Wednesday night, warm light and conversation creating a cocoon against the spring rain. We ordered wine, clinked glasses in a toast to freedom. "So," Rachel said after our first sips, "have you heard from Eleanor lately?" I nodded. "She called yesterday. She's selling the Hamptons house, downsizing to a condo. Never thought you'd have a better relationship with your ex-mother-in-law after the divorce than during the marriage." It was true. Eleanor and I had developed an unexpected connection, not close exactly, but honest in a way we'd never been while I was married to her son. Monthly lunches, occasional phone calls. She'd even helped fund a scholarship for survivors of financial abuse, though she'd insisted her name be kept out of it. "People surprise you," I said simply. "Speaking of surprises," Rachel leaned forward conspiratorially, "that new creative director keeps asking about you. David, the one with the glasses and the ridiculously good taste in music." I felt a blush rising. "He's just being friendly." "Samantha Hayes, you are the worst liar." She grinned. "He lights up. When you walk into conference rooms, just say the word and I'll arrange an accidental meeting outside of work." "I'm not ready," I said automatically, then paused, reconsidering. "Or maybe, I don't know, maybe I am." Rachel squeezed my hand. "No pressure. Just keeping you informed of your options." After dinner, we walked through the gradually clearing night, the rain reduced to a fine mist that caught the streetlights like suspended diamonds. "Want to come over for a nightcap?" Rachel offered as we neared my building. "Actually, I think I need some quiet time tonight. Rain check?" She hugged me goodbye, understanding as always. "Call if you need anything." Alone in my apartment, truly mine now, redecorated with colors and textures Michael would have vetoed, I kicked off my shoes and poured a small glass of bourbon. A new habit, one of many small rebellions against my former life. Michael had always insisted I didn't really like bourbon. Turns out he'd been wrong about that too. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made me sit up straighter. Hudson Trust Bank. Customer Appreciation Event. Mr. Thompson had stayed in touch occasionally. Always professional, but with an underlying kindness that had helped me through some of the darkest days. The message was a formal invitation to a customer appreciation dinner next month, with a personal note added. Mrs. Hayes, or Ms. Collins now I understand. It would be an honor if you could attend. Your situation last year led to our improved staff training on recognizing financial coercion. You've helped more people than you know. Sincerely, James Thompson. I smiled, typing a quick acceptance. I'd reverted to my maiden name, Samantha Collins, not out of shame for the Hayes name, but from a desire to reclaim who I'd been before. Sometimes starting over means going back to your roots. As I readied for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 36, I looked younger than I had at 35. The constant tension that had lined my face replaced by a calm confidence. I'd started therapy 3 months after the bank incident, working through not just the trauma of Michael's betrayal, but the patterns that had led me to accept his subtle control for so many years. You survived, I whispered to my reflection, a nightly ritual that had evolved from reassurance to celebration. In bed, I opened my journal, another new habit, this one suggested by my therapist. On the page dated exactly 1 year ago, I'd written, I don't know who I am without him. 15 years of being Mrs. Hayes, of building my life around his needs, his career, his vision of our future. Who am I now? What do I want? I traced the words with my finger, remembering the fear and uncertainty that had accompanied them. Then I turned to a fresh page and wrote, 1 year later, I am Samantha Collins, marketing director, Brooklyn apartment owner, survivor. I am the woman who slipped a note to a bank teller and changed her own life. I am the woman who testified against financial abuse and helped change bank policies. I am the woman who sleeps soundly in a bed that's just the right softness for her. Alone. I know exactly who I am now. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the rain having washed away the city's grime. I dressed for work in a vivid blue dress I'd bought to celebrate my promotion, a color Michael would have called attention-seeking. I wore it now with satisfaction, adding earrings that had been a gift from Rachel to mark 6 months of independence. At the office, I stopped by the creative department with marketing briefs that probably could have been emailed. David looked up from his desk, his smile immediate and genuine. Samantha, good morning. I thought you might want to discuss these in person, I said, suddenly feeling like a teenager with a crush. I'd like that. He adjusted his glasses, an endearing habit I'd noticed months ago but had pretended not to. Maybe over coffee? There's a new place downstairs. Coffee sounds perfect. As we walked to the elevator, chatting about the upcoming campaign, I felt a flutter of possibility. Not a replacement for what I'd lost, but something entirely new. Something authentic. Outside, New York bustled around us, indifferent to personal transformations, but somehow supporting them anyway. This city had witnessed my unraveling and my reweaving. These streets had carried me broken and now carried me whole. We found a table by the window in the coffee shop, sunlight streaming across the small space between us. David asked questions about the marketing strategy, but also about me. Simple questions with no agenda behind them, genuine curiosity about my thoughts and preferences. I like your dress, he said during a pause in conversation. That color is spectacular. I smiled, feeling warmth rise to my cheeks. Thank you. It's my power color. It suits you. Confident. Bold. Later that evening, I returned to my apartment with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I kicked off my shoes, made dinner just the way I liked it, and ate by the window watching Brooklyn shift from day to night. My phone buzzed with a text from David, a simple thank you for the coffee and conversation, with a tentative question about lunch later in the week. I replied with an equally simple yes. Setting the phone down, I gazed out at the city, my city, and felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The journey from that desperate moment at the bank counter to this quiet evening had been harder than I could have, I imagined, filled with legal battles, painful revelations, and moments of doubt. But here I stood, on the other side of trauma, not unchanged. No one emerges from fire the same as they entered it, but stronger, clearer, more authentically myself than I'd been in 15 years of marriage. I picked up my journal again, turning to a fresh page. Tonight's entry would be brief but truthful. Today, I realized something important. True strength begins the moment you refuse to surrender your dignity. My life now is not the one I planned, but it's fully mine. Every choice, every consequence, every possibility. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. As I closed the journal, I caught sight of the night sky through my window. Stars barely visible through the city's glow, but present. Nonetheless, navigational points that had always been there, even when clouds obscured them. Just like my own worth, I thought. Always there, even when I couldn't see it. I placed my palm against the cool glass, a mirror of that rainy night a year ago. But this time, instead of seeking escape, I was embracing my place in the world, standing firmly in the center of a life rebuilt with intention, truth, and hard-won wisdom. You did it, I whispered to the city, to myself. You really did it. And in that moment of quiet acknowledgement, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever came next, career shifts, new relationships, unknown challenges, I would face it all as myself, undiminished, unafraid. The woman who had passed that desperate note in Hudson Trust Bank had saved more than her financial future that day. She had saved herself,